Hello, my name is Chris Keyack with Keyack Technology Solutions. In this video today, I'm going to talk a little bit about ABM revisions. And this is something that has been a thorn in my side in Tekla structures for quite a long time. If you work with large fabricators, it can sometimes be a significant process in trying to do add and drop reports for them, especially throughout multiple ABM revisions on the job, throughout the course of the job, even after you started connecting. So here I'm going to show you a process that helps the detailer and the fabricator work together to try to deal with these revisions and prevent costly, up to thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars in material mistakes and not communicating changes properly, especially on a job that's got a lot of revisions. All right, so to get started, let's say that I'm here in the Tekla Structures model. I've done a model check and everything is ready to go. And in this particular demonstration, I'm going to actually show you when I do not assign the preliminary marks. So I do not do numbering here, and I don't come in here and go to save preliminary numbers. So you'll see here that I've actually made a custom objects IMP file and a custom UDA tab here that's going to show me and remember ABM data, but I've also moved the preliminary mark field here. And this preliminary mark UDA can be very dangerous. And I'm specifically my tool is going to actually assign the ABM marks, and then you can import those back into the Tekla model. The only reason why I would import them back into the Tekla model is because of Tekla PowerFab and the workflow of exporting the preliminary or ABM mark to PowerFab in your issue for fabrication releases. So that way, if the fabricator is linking the material between production control back to what they did on their requisitions and then their purchase orders and using the link feature in PowerFab, then you'll be able to make sure that the detailer exports that ABM mark into the XML export for fabrication. But otherwise, you could use this workflow where if you don't really care about the preliminary mark and don't care about linking in PowerFab, then really you could leave this blank and just use the tool that I have here to show you the changes in quantities and things like that and let it just assign the ABM marks for you. But I'm just going to show you at first here where there's no preliminary marks set by the Tekla detailer. So what I'm going to do is I've got the model all set here, and I'm going to process my Rev 0. So I'm going to open up my ABM tool here, and there's some custom reports that I've got, and I'll just set the Rev number here to ABM Rev 0. Now, I still need to pay attention to what it is that I want to select to export. So you can't just say select all. You do need to choose as the detailer what it is the fabricators told you that needs to be out on the ABM. Maybe that's wide flange, maybe that's certain plates over a certain thickness, etc. So I'm just selecting the whole entire job here, and I'll go ahead and say export. Now, when I do that, it's going to generate these two reports. The first one is just a summary report, and this is actually just using the Tekla template editor. So I'm calling some reports here with the API, and so you can modify and edit some of the things on here. You can't really change too much because these are the required fields that my tool is using to compare things. But you can see that here's a summary that the fabricator would look at, and you can use that for checking. But the big thing here is that this tool is going to export the GUID, and then it's going to export all the critical ABM data here. And this is going to be eventually used for change management. So now I'm going to go ahead and close this down. And these are just the starting deliverables. And then what I'll do next is I'll go over and I'll open these up in my ABM Comparison tool that does not require Tekla structures. So you could send those two files that I just showed you to the fabricator and they could run this, but I would recommend as the detailer to run this so that way you can kind of see what's going on and then import this data back into the model. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch my ABM Comparison tool. And so this is again outside of Tekla structures, and I'm going to load the original parts. So that's going to be my Rev 0 file. And then what that'll do is it will do a couple things. First of all, if before I loaded that up, if I said round lengths up to the nearest 12 inches or 5 feet or whatever the fabricator wants, then I can actually take a lot of the lengths, especially if there's been connection setbacks or certain things. And if you want this to round up to the nearest foot, the reason for that is because the fabricator may want to buy bundles and there may be a minimum bundle quantity from the mill in order to get a better price on the material. And so they may have this option here to round things to the nearest foot or even more in order to get more things combining with the same mark. Now, what the tool will do, you don't really see it here, but when you load that up, if the ABM marks were empty from the detailer, the tool will actually automatically sort through, look at similar parts and similar quantities, and assign the ABM marks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply just say save updated ABM, and then it creates some additional files here. So the additional files that the tool creates is this XLS or Excel file. So, I'll actually open this up. And really, this is just a material summary list, and look at what you'll see here. You'll see that those ABM marks are actually here automatically assigned by the tool, even though they weren't done in Tekla structures by the detailer. And so it's kind of like doing an internal numbering process based on all of these properties and comparing them, and then assigning an ABM mark to that. Now, the key thing about this Excel spreadsheet is that this could actually be imported into the combining module in Tekla PowerFab. So this is something that is one of the two options that the Fabricator can use to import that bill of material. Now, the other methodology is that I'm actually producing a XML export, which this could be used by the Fabricator to import into production control. Now, in this video, I'm not going to cover why you would do one or the other, but other than I'll just say that the XML in production control gives you more automated change management notifications in PowerFab than the combining module will. And so there might be a workflow reason why the Fabricator may do one versus the other, but I'll cover that in a separate video. So that gets created. And then the other thing that gets created here is this merged CSV file. So if I open this up, this is the same report that came out of Tekla, except for the ABM marks are now in here. So the GUID is in here, but the ABM marks and any rounding of the lengths based on what I had in my dialog box here of rounding to the nearest 12 or whatever I want, that is also updated in here. And what I can do is I can import this ABM mark and this updated length back into the model. So let me show you what I'm going to do with that. So I'll just actually close this tool again real quick. And what I want you to see is that when I actually ran the ABM, the export, the Rev 0 export, if I go to my user-defined attributes, you'll see that it actually tags the revision number for the ABM that I did, the date that I did it, and it actually will write any of the current ABM data in the model or the current properties in the model, and it writes it to these user-defined attributes. Now, why would I do that? Well, the reason I would do this is that way I can actually check as the detailer, if I start doing some design revisions, I can actually keep track with these user-defined attributes, what I may have changed, along the way. And so that way I can see that, hey, okay, like I've changed the profile or I've changed the length to be longer, and I need to actually tag this and comment this to the Fabricator and pay attention that this is actually a change order. Now, you don't have to do this. The tool will do it, and you don't have to use this, but it is a good reference for the detailer. The tool is going to automatically detect the change management, but I just wanted you to see that as the detailer, you could import this back in for reference. Now, I need to get those ABM marks back in here, so I'm going to go ahead and open up my tool, and I'm going to go ahead and say import ABM. So I'm getting these two files back from the Fabricator, the merged CSV with the, or if I ran the tool as a detailer, I'm going to select this. And what it does is now if I go back to those beams and the user-defined attributes, I'm going to see the ABM mark has now been imported. Okay, so now that the tool automatically generated that, I imported that back into the model here. All right, so I'll close that down. And there are no statuses to import because there's no change management. So that is going to be on the next step when I do a Rev 1. Okay, so now I'm going to do some design revisions. So to do that, what I'll do is maybe I'll actually delete these two beams. Let's say that this opening no longer exists, and we're going to actually make a new beam here. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the steel tab, and I'll go to my beam command, and I'll put in this new beam here. So I'll put that in there. Now, what I could do is if I know that this is exactly the same size as another beam, so maybe like this is exactly the same, so I'll match the properties to this and just say modify. Now let's see if that match to properties actually brought the user-defined attributes across too. So I'll come in here, and it looks like it brought the reference here, but it didn't bring across the preliminary mark. So that's empty. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that's a unique attribute there that looks like it didn't come across. And let me actually just check this one to see if those attributes actually came across. So yeah, that's got preliminary mark, but when I click on this one here, it does not have the preliminary mark. And this is actually a little bit misleading because I haven't actually ABM'd this, so I probably should clear these values out. So this is kind of like the danger of the UDAs if you're using them. They don't impact the tool in any way. They're really just there for the detailer's reference, but I'm just going to uncheck those values and make sure that those are cleared out. So now the next thing is that that's a new beam. I deleted two pieces, and then maybe I'm going to come in here and just change the sizes of these. And let's actually see, those are W24 by 55s right now. What are these other fill beams? W18s. So watch this. These actually have some existing marks. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to turn these into W18 by 35s. All right. And I'm going to show you what happens when, as the detailer, I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing and I leave this ABM mark here like I'm not supposed to. Like if the real workflow here is if I'm modifying some stuff and I want the tool to assign the piece marks, then what I should really do is just uncheck my checkboxes here and I should just get rid of that ABM mark. But I want to show you the workflow of when I mess up and I leave a bad mark in here and show you what the tool does. All right, so not that I need to run numbering, but I'll just do numbering. Again, actually, I don't need to do that for the tool because the tool does not care about actually the current piece marks in the model. It just cares about the properties on the parts. But I've made some changes. I added a new beam, I deleted a couple beams, and I modified the profile on a couple pieces here. And again, if you start connecting the pieces in the model, that's not a problem. The tool looks for only things that got longer and does not really care about things getting much shorter unless they're really like longer than the tolerance that you put in the tool, which the default is at like 2 feet. Okay, so now that we've got that there, now it's time to process the Rev 1. So I'm going to select all my steel again. I've got my filter on down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my tool and I'm going to run the Rev 1 export. So I'll change this to Rev 1 and then I'll go ahead and say export, and then it's going to go ahead and write that out and create those now Rev 1 reports that I can use. All right, so now as the fabricator, or again as the detailer, just using the ABM comparison tool, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to load the original parts. And the original parts, I'm going to actually use the merged one that updated the lengths and the ABM marks. I'm going to use that because that's got all my ABM marks in it. And then what I'll do is I'll also load the new parts, which is going to be this ABM Rev 1 that I just exported right now. So I'm comparing a original copy of the model and the original ABM to the new updated version of the model. And I'll press the compare button. Now, here's what I'm going to see. I see bad ABM mark. Okay. So what this is showing me is that I've got, a quantity in here where the profile changed from W24 to W18, and there's 2 of them, and it has a bad ABM mark here where I've had the same ABM mark on 2 completely different parts. So I got to fix that. The tool will not automatically fix that because it doesn't want to overwrite something that the detailer maybe did if you manually did the prelim marks or if you use Tekla's numbering to do the prelim marks. But it is trying to identify bad marks if possible. So I'll need to actually fix that and take care of that. But let's look at what else happened. There was a quantity of 2 pieces that were deleted, those 12x14s. So that's good. I can see that that's accurate. Then I have a quantity change message here just saying that, hey, there were a bunch of pieces in the model that had this ABM2, and looks like there's a quantity change on this, and so I need to kind of just keep an eye on that as the fabricator, especially if I'm using ABM marks to track things. Now here I've got this one new beam that I had put in. And that's because I put that beam on the outside there. And then again, I have a quantity change because this is now combining, and I have a quantity increase on these ABM 4s from 39 to 40. So, hey, this looks really great. The tool, if I'm a purchasing agent, this really just simplifies the heck out of things. And I don't have to do anything as the detailer other than I need to go fix this bad mark. So let me show you how to fix that bad mark. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Save ABM. I'll have ABM Rev 1 here on the tool, and I'll hit Save ABM Rev 1. And that will then save that information here into the model. And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that back in to my tool. Okay, so now I'm back in Tekla Structures, and I'm going to open up my ABM Comparison tool within Tekla. And what I'll do is I'll actually come in here and I will choose the Import ABM option, and I'll select on the ABM Rev 1 merged. So that came from the ABM Comparison tool outside of Tekla. So I'll go ahead and select on that. And what that'll do is it'll scan through the model, and it's going to go ahead and actually bring in that data here into the model, and it'll show me that this is Rev 1, the date that that's actually been done on, and then I can come in here and I can see that, here's all of the ABM marks and all that data imported. Now, the next thing that matters is I want to find out where those pieces are in the model that have a bad mark on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say import status, and then I'm going to choose the Rev 1 change statuses report that came from the ABM comparison tool. So when I do that, it'll show me here that, hey, there are 2 pieces that it couldn't find in the model because these were deleted and those don't exist in the model, so it can actually find them. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the background of the view properties, and I'll color the model by ABM change status, which will show me new, modified, and then bad mark. And I can't see deleted because deleted doesn't exist in the model. And I'm not really trying to recreate change management like how Tekla has its change management functionality, but I need to be able to troubleshoot the ABM changes if there's something that I got to take action on, like this bad mark. So I'm going to go ahead and colorize the model and say OK. And look at that. We can see where the new piece of steel is, and we can see where these two bad marks are. So what I need to do is I need to take care of that. So let's go ahead and just open up the user-defined attributes. I'll uncheck my checkboxes, go to the ABM Marks here, and I can see that I've got an ABM2, and I've got other steel in the model that's ABM2 that probably should has the same mark, and these are different profiles, so I should probably take care of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear out that mark and just go ahead and say modify. And by clearing that out, now the tool is going to go ahead and recalculate and see if there's another ABM mark that already exists that it can combine with, if there's something similar, or it'll assign a new mark automatically. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this out just so that way that status gets cleared, and then I'm all good there. And then the next thing I might do is just say that I've processed this so I don't get confused on the next go round. I'm going to come in here and go to user defined attributes. And if this particular piece, I notice that it's new and I verify, yep, that's correct, it's new, then what I can do is I can actually just turn this off here and just say modify, so that goes away. And now I have basically all my statuses cleared out. So let's go back to the ABM comparison tool one more time, and let's just kind of fix all this. But what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to actually need to re-export my Rev 1 steel. So let's go back in that the tool, and we'll do Rev 1, and we'll go ahead and say export. So that'll run, and that reruns those reports. So the report that this tool is making is it makes the ABM Rev 1 summary file, and then it also makes just the ABM just Rev 1 CSV file. So these are the two files. If I do date modified, these are the two files that this tool does when it does the export. All right, so now I've got those there. I'm going to go back to the ABM comparison tool one more time. So we'll go to ABM comparison. And then what I'll do is I'll say load original parts, which is going to be the ABM Rev 0 merged. Then I'm going to load new parts, which is going to be the ABM Rev 1. That's the file that I just made here like a second ago from Tekla. So I'll load that up. I'll then go ahead and say compare. And now I don't have a bad mark problem, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go to deleted. I see that two of these were deleted. Okay. Then I'll go in here and I can see that now this has gone from a ABM2 and I've got a quantity of 34 has now dropped to 32 because those two changed, right? So now what I can do is I can look at this one. I've got one new beam, which I did see that on the left side of the model. And then I can see that that actually became an ABM4. So that new beam combined here and it increased the quantity from 39 to 40. So it tells you all the quantity changes based on the ABM marks. Now there was the modification here, right? So this is actually showing that the quantity here where I had these at ABM2 and now these actually took on this ABM6 mark. So like, you know, these 18 by 35s, it doesn't mean that there's 42 new ABM6s. That's not what this is saying. But it is saying here, if I go to the ABM6 quantity change, that see how this increased by 2. Because now I fixed those two bad mark pieces that were here in the model, and they took on a existing ABM mark that was already there in the model, and it took on, for instance, this ABM6. So those two 18 by 35s, when I cleared out the mark, the ABM2 that was there, then the tool automatically saw that, hey, the mark was empty. I already saw that there's another mark in the model, the ABM6, that has exactly the right properties here for these new beams. And now I'm just going to assign that ABM6 to that and show that there's a quantity increase on that, which is why this is increased by 2. So again, when you see this modified, don't get afraid that, oh my gosh, there's 42 new pieces. That's not what it's saying. It's just saying that it took ABM6 as the mark, and there's now a total of 42 of those pieces. And it basically used to be 2 of those ABM2s. So again, if I go back to ABM2, see how this went from 34 down to 32. So that's where the 2 marks changed and kind of went down. And then now it's taken this 2 new here for this ABM6. Okay, now if you wanted to just assign brand new marks and not try to take existing marks of pieces that have already been out for the ABM, then this is where you just control that yourself. If you manually assign the marks and just would assign brand new ones to all the new steel and modified steel just to keep them isolated from any existing ABM marks, then you can choose to do that as the detailer, and then the tool will not override or change that as long as there's not a bad mark in there. So there we go. Now we've got that fixed up. We can see that the tool is all set and the ABM is correct. Then I'm going to go ahead and say that this is ABM Rev 1. I'll save the updated ABM, and then it's going to create some additional files here. Now for the Fabricator, a couple of key things here to pay attention to that the tool is going to create for you. So for one, I'm going to get the ABM Rev 1 XLS. So that's the summary that I could import into PowerFab if I want. Again, the combining module. And then I have the XML that we were talking about earlier. The other key thing here is that there is the Rev 1 changes report. So if the Fabricator doesn't want to use this tool and you're the detailer doing this kind of for them, you could send them the change management report, and it's exactly the same output of what I was just looking at in the tool, but it just gives it to me in a nice Excel form. And so that way I can kind of follow and track all the changes and which materials and things have actually been modified and what I need to do as the purchasing agent to take care of this. So you can send that across to them if you want to. Now there's also this change statuses, and this is the thing that we were importing back in to like find a bad mark, but now I'm going to import this back in there one more time and just make sure that everything is okay. So I see 2 modified and 1 new status, and let's just see how that imports in. All right, so I'll close this down and we'll launch the ABM Comparison tool. I'm going to go ahead and say import ABM, and I'll actually select the ABM merged for that. And again, that's just going to go through and update all of the properties. So I'm specifically going to go in here on this one, the ones that I know I modified, and I'll just go to that ABM, and there it is. There's ABM 6 now, because that was empty before we emptied it when we processed the ABM Rev 1, but the tool assigned it to ABM 6, and we can see all the properties here. But now I want that status to update. So if I say import status and I select on the change statuses report for Rev 1, that'll tell me about the 2 GUIDs not being in there, but look at that. It colorizes yellow and tells me that these have been modified, and that's exactly what the tool found. It saw that these were modified and that the profile had changed from what it was before, and so now that new updated profile has been imported in here based on what it is actually in the model, and we can see the new ABM mark and everything has been set. So again, the main purpose of these colorizations is really to help you find bad marks, and it's just for you as the detailer to just kind of double check and make sure that what you're sending across to the Fabricator logically makes sense, especially if you're the project manager for the job as the detailer, and you're like, yep, I'm looking at the design revisions and this ABM that we're processing, and this is the steel that we did modify or that is new. The only, again, bad thing about this process is because I am deleting the actual members out of the model. You can't see where the deleted parts are, but the change management tool will tell you about that and tell the Fabricator what's going on. But that's the only thing that you kind of can't see with this tool because the deleted objects don't exist in the model anymore. But hopefully, if you watch this a couple of times, you can see the power of basically the automation here and getting rid of those manual processes, especially when you mess up the prelim marks as a detailer, whether the UDAs actually get overwritten or things like that. And again, you don't need to do this process of importing it back into the model. If the Fabricator really doesn't care about the linking feature of the ABM marks over in PowerFab, and they just really want to know the change management of what's going on in the materials, and they don't care about that link of the ABM marks, then don't import the ABM marks back into Tekla. The ABM marks will just be used by the tool to assign quantities and things like that for the Fabricator, and really you'll just process the exports. There's no need to import it back in. But I did want to show the workflow of where I can use this tool to import status and import ABM marks back in if you did not use Tekla to create the prelim marks. So that way you can see that those prelim marks can come back in here so that we can use those for production control and linking with PowerFab. Again, my name is Chris Keyack with Keyack Technology Solutions, and thanks for watching this video on ABM changes with Tekla Structures and Tekla PowerFab. I am selling this tool to both detailers and fabricators. If you're interested in learning more about this workflow and seeing how it can work on your specific jobs, please feel free to reach out to me.